Good morning. The Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation will come to order. Today we will hear from three nominees. John Deleeuw, nominee to serve as a board member of the National Transportation Safety Board. Richard Kloster, nominee to serve as a member of the Surface Transportation Board. And Michelle Schultz, nominee to continue to serve as a member of the Surface Transportation Board. Congratulations to each of you. Before I introduce the nominees, I want to spend a moment reflecting on the unprecedented impacts the continued government shutdown is having on Americans' lives. Almost a month ago, CNN quoted a senior Democratic aide as saying that Senate Democrats wouldn't reopen the government short of, quote, planes falling out of the sky. Given the tragic accident we saw this week, sadly, Senate Democrats seem to want to put that theory to test. Yesterday, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and FAA Administrator Brian Bedford announced that beginning tomorrow morning, there will be a 10% mandatory reduction in flights at 40 airports across the nation. The safety data that the FAA relies on to keep the system safe was blinking red. There's too many key staffers calling out because they're not getting paid and having to save every penny and find ways to make ends meet. Tens of thousands of Americans will have their flights canceled every single day, due entirely to Senate Democrats, with a few notable exceptions, virtually all of whom have voted now 14 times to keep the government shut down, and they have taken the government and the air traffic control system hostage. Air traffic controllers are unpaid, they are frustrated, and they are fatigued. A plane crashed in Louisville this week, and the NTSB investigators on scene aren't getting paid. The impacts of this shutdown are real and becoming dangerous. And understand the reason there's a 10% reduction in flights is the FAA said they could not maintain the airspace safely at full load. That is the consequence of this shutdown, and the Schumer shutdown needs to end. It is the longest shutdown in the history of the United States of America. And enough is enough. Now is a time for responsible leadership. Now I'll turn to today's nominees. Let's begin with John Deleeuw, a proud Texan of nearly 40 years. Mr. Deleeuw is an accomplished safety professional and airline captain who began his aviation career in the Air Force flying C-130 Hercules planes, supporting combat missions in Desert Storm. After his military service, Mr. Deleeuw joined American Airlines as a line captain and first officer in 1991. After 20-plus years of flying for American, he then led the airline's safety initiatives for more than a decade. He also served as chairman of the American Pilots Association's National Safety Committee, and he teaches aviation safety courses at the University of Southern California. As I have seen from the investigation into the flight, of the crash of the flight 5342 near DCA, the NTSB needs knowledgeable and experienced members to keep our transportation system safe. Mr. Deleeuw will draw on his extensive aviation safety background to investigate accidents and propose recommendations to prevent future harm. He is, without a doubt, one of the most decorated and qualified individuals to come before us. His resume is a perfect match for the NTSB. We are also joined today by NTSB Chairwoman Jennifer Homendy, who is such a regular in this committee that we may have to find her a seat on the dais. I appreciate her being here. As she said about Mr. Deleeuw's nomination back in September, John has an extensive background in aviation safety and has worked alongside the NTSB for decades. He often uses lessons learned to improve safety throughout transportation, including oil and pipelines and maritime. John will be an excellent addition to the board if confirmed. Next, we have Richard Kloster to serve on the STB. Mr. Kloster is a seasoned railroad and transportation logistics professional with over 4 decades of private sector experience. He has worked for several railroads, including the Chicago and Northwestern Transportation Company and the Indiana Railroad Company. Mr. Kloster also founded his own transportation consulting firm and served as a board member of the Railway Supply Institute. If confirmed, Mr. Kloster will use his extensive knowledge of the rail industry, as well as his experience working for railroads, suppliers, and shippers to advance the STB's economic oversight of freight railroads. Lastly, President Trump has renominated Michelle Schultz to continue to serve on the STB. Ms. Schultz's decades of legal and transportation experience have served her well on the STB. Prior to joining STB in January 2021, she spent 14 years leading legislative affairs and legal strategy at the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, the nation's 6th largest public transportation system. As vice chairman of the STB, Ms. Schultz has prioritized engaging with stakeholders to improve freight rail service quality and efficiency at the agency. If confirmed, she will continue to be a diligent, thoughtful member of the STB, working to advance essential oversight of the railroads. While my Democrat colleagues have sought to delay and derail this hearing based on the President's exercise of his Article II power, the focus of today should be plain and simple: supporting transportation safety and rail competition. The 3 individuals before us have a breadth of knowledge in transportation safety and railroad operations and are well equipped to serve on the NTSB and the STB. I'm eager to hear how each of you will approach your roles in ensuring the overall strength and safety of our country's transportation system. I now turn to Senator Lujan, who is sitting in for Ranking Member Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, Mr. Chairman, as we get started today, I appreciate your remarks and opening. Just for anyone that's not aware, across America, the majority of the House of Representatives is Republicans. Speaker of the House of Representatives is a Republican. The majority of the United States Senate is Republican. The majority leader of the United States Senate is a Republican. The President of the United States is a Republican. Republicans have the majority, they're in charge. With majorities and with the gavels comes responsibility. The good senator from Texas is the chair of this committee because Republicans are in the majority. We had a governor from the state of New Mexico, cattle rancher, his name was Bruce King. And Bruce used to tell us when folks couldn't find some solution, he says, you know, you gotta lock people up in a barn and not let them out until they can come up with a solution to the problem. My friend from Texas understands that. They've got good cattle ranches down there. They've got good barns down there. The President of the United States just finished jet-setting around the world, and he decided to come back and celebrate with a Roaring 20s party in Florida. Roaring 20s. That was a difficult time in our nation's history because those parties were about celebrating folks being broke, people not having food. And they had that party, and then on, I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday I guess it was, the president had a breakfast at the White House, which is good. He should have more breakfasts. But he only invited Senate Republicans. And in that meeting, what was reported is he told them, shutdown's not good on Republicans. He knows they're in charge. I certainly hope the president will stick to his words when he said it's incumbent upon the president of the United States to prevent shutdowns, to solve shutdowns. And I certainly hope that even where there are differences, that people come into a room and do the right thing because everyone wants this shutdown to end. I don't believe my Republican colleagues want to see insurance premiums across America double either. I really don't. They care about their constituents the way that I care about my constituents. And I'm certainly hopeful that we'll see some leadership now, bring some people together, get some breakfast. If they need some New Mexico chili to make it better, I'll bring it. But we've got to make sure that people come together. So with that, Mr. Chairman, with my opening here, Captain Deleeuw, Mr. Kloster, and Ms. Schultz, congratulations on your nominations and for taking time to be here today. And before I get to my questioning, I have to say I am deeply disturbed and frankly alarmed that the committee is rushing ahead with this nomination to replace NTSB Vice Chair Alvin Brown, who President Trump illegally removed earlier this year. Anyone that looks at the law, looks at the rules surrounding this, it's plain and simple. The facts are straightforward. The Senate unanimously confirmed Vice Chair Brown last year, and his term does not expire until the end of next year, and the president removed him without complying with the law that Congress passed. Plain and simple. And now folks are choosing to look the other way and advance his replacement, even though there isn't a clear vacancy to fill under the law. As the chair knows, last week, my Democratic colleagues and I, we sent a letter conveying our strong opposition to proceeding with this hearing on Vice Chair Brown's replacement. Several colleagues on this committee co-signed this. As we wrote in that letter, I believe rushing this process forward, particularly while there is active litigation over this very issue, only emboldens the White House to ignore the law. And by holding this hearing, Republicans are just rubber stamping this behavior. So I will again urge my colleagues not to proceed with this NTSB nomination until the ongoing litigation is conclusively resolved on its merits. Some might say this is all inside baseball, too far removed from the day-to-day lives of Americans. But these are not just academic musings. The NTSB, like many other independent agencies, works every day to help Americans stay safe by seeking to unravel its independent status, inject uncertainty, and politicize the board. The administration is undermining the NTSB's ability to formulate independent safety recommendations that save people's lives. So, Captain Deleeuw, I wish your nomination came under different circumstances because I acknowledge your significant experience. I imagine under any other time, if there was an opening, you'd probably get unanimous vote out of here and off the floor and everywhere else. Your credentials are clear. Your qualifications are absolutely clear. This is not about you at all, sir, at all. I applaud your service and I applaud what you have done, what you've achieved. Now, that said, given your current employment with American Airlines, as you know, you'll need to recuse yourself from working on the NTSB's pending investigation into the January 29th DCA mid-air collision. Captain Deleeuw, I hope you will make clear today that you understand the vital importance of an independent NTSB. And out of respect for that independence and the rule of law, I hope you'll firmly commit to stepping aside if the court declares Mr. Brown's removal to be unlawful. In addition to the NTSB, we also have two nominees for Surface Transportation Board. Ms. Kloster, you'll be joining the board after a long career in the rail industry. And Ms. Schultz, you will be renominated a second term on the board. The STB is another independent agency which plays a critical role in protecting business and consumers from unfair business practices that harm competition in the rail industry. If confirmed, you'll be responsible for reviewing the largest rail merger in history between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern. I would also point out that early this year, President Trump unlawfully removed STSB member Robert Primus without cause, in violation of the law. Mr. Primus is also actively challenging his removal in court. For the record, however, I will note that neither of today's STSB nominees would replace Mr. Primus if confirmed. Nevertheless, the president's actions against Mr. Primus only underscores why we need to have your firm commitment that you will carry out your duties independent of improper political influence if confirmed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. You know, I would note that witnesses in court are asked at the beginning of their testimony to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And one of the most important elements of that is the second element, the whole truth. What Senator Lujan said is correct. It is true that Republicans have a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, and a majority in the White House because the American people voted for Republicans in 2024. They voted for President Trump. They voted for a Republican majority in the Senate. They voted for a Republican majority in the House. The whole truth that Senator Lujan knows well, but that he omitted, is under the Senate rules, funding for the government cannot proceed in the Senate without 60 votes. Senator Lujan is very well aware of that. There are only 53 Republicans in the Senate. That means in order to fund the government, at least 7 Democrats have to vote to fund the government. So the phrase, which is facilely used of, well, Republicans control everything, you guys should fund it, is said deliberately playing on the fact that many people don't know you need 60 votes to proceed to fund the government. And I would note, Senator Lujan knows that in part because when Joe Biden was president, this isn't a new situation. When Joe Biden was president, 13 times, Senate Republicans joined with Democrats to pass a clean continuing resolution. We could have done the same thing. When Joe Biden was president, the Democrats did not have 60 votes. What differed is when Joe Biden was president, Republicans demonstrated responsibility. We didn't shut the government down. Every Democrat in this body, you can play video after video of them going on TV, intoning a government shutdown is irresponsible, it is reckless, it hurts Americans. They all know that. They've all said that repeatedly. By the way, we had this situation happen earlier this year. In March, government funding expired. And what happened? In March, a handful of Senate Democrats did the responsible thing, and they joined with Republicans in keeping the government open. But then a political problem developed, which is Chuck Schumer, the Democrat leader in the Senate, almost lost his job. The extreme left wing of the Democrat Party got very, very angry that the Democrats allowed the government to open. And Schumer is very afraid of being primaried from the left. The election results on Tuesday underscore the grave political peril Schumer sees from the extreme left in the party. So why are we in the longest shutdown in history? For one reason, for Senator Schumer and Senate Democrats to demonstrate to the extreme left wing of their party that they really, really, really hate Donald Trump. Well, we got that point. Every federal employee who hasn't gotten a paycheck got that point. We understand. Nobody will be confused that my Democrat colleagues are sleeping at night with a Donald Trump nightlight on the wall. We know their view. Senator Lujan said we just need to find a path forward. We know the path forward. It's the exact same path forward that we took 13 times when Biden was president. The path forward is voting to fund the government and passing a clean continuing resolution. The path forward is literally the turn of a wrist. When we vote on a continuing resolution, instead of doing this, rotate your wrist 180 degrees. That's how we open the government. We've had 3 Senate Democrats show the courage to vote to keep the government open. Senator Fetterman, a member of this committee, has said quite candidly, this is a Democrat shutdown. For the sake of the TSA agents, for the sake of the air traffic controllers, for the sake of the flying public, let's not test that idiot Democrat staffer who told Politico we'll keep the shutdown going until planes start falling from the sky. That's not funny. And I do believe my colleagues on the Democrat side, they don't want to see that happen. But every day that they starve the system of the resources it needs, they increase the chances of a tragedy like that occurring. Mr. Deleeuw, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, Senator Lujan, and members of the committee. It's an honor to appear before you today as you consider my nomination to be a member of the National Transportation Safety Board. I'm immensely grateful to President Trump for nominating me, as this is a lifelong dream. As a safety professional who has worked alongside the NTSB for nearly 2 decades, I cannot think of a greater privilege than to serve the public at the world's preeminent safety investigation agency, whose sole mission is to save lives. Before I begin, I would like to recognize some of my family and friends. Though they aren't able to be with me today in person, my wife Kim is watching this hearing online with my mom Ruby in Tucson, Arizona. My son Peter and his wife Meredith have blessed Kim and me with 2 grandchildren, Mason and Mabel. My daughter Julia and her husband Peter recently welcomed into the world our grandson Liam. My sister Jane and my brother Howard also deserve recognition for letting me be their big brother. I would also like to especially recognize my colleagues in the safety department at American Airlines, who are also watching online and have provided me with incredible support and encouragement. It is a privilege to work with amazing safety professionals in America and throughout the industry. Special thanks to Cedric Wilson, David Seymour, and the entire American Airlines senior leadership team for their assistance and backing. There are 3 things I would like for you to know as you consider my nomination for the board. First, I'm passionate about safety. I was fortunate to serve our country as a pilot in the United States Air Force for 7.5 years. In that time, several of my fellow crew members were killed in the line of duty flying military aircraft. Many of these accidents could have been avoided, and I was determined to learn from each of them. In some cases, that meant changing a procedure. Other times, it meant improving education and training. But the goal was always the same, to prevent a similar accident from happening. After serving in Desert Storm, I was hired as a pilot for American Airlines, and I'm currently a captain on the Boeing 787 Dreamliner with over 19,000 flight hours. Today, I also serve as the American Airlines Managing Director of Safety and Efficiency. Seeking to fully immerse myself in safety, I volunteered my time and efforts with the Allied Pilots Association, which represents the pilots of American Airlines. Mr. Chairman, I ask that letters supporting my nomination from the Allied Pilots Association, the Southwest Airlines Pilots Association, and many others be included in the hearing record. Second, the NTSB saves lives. As I mentioned, I worked closely with the NTSB for more than 15 years, and I have enormous respect for the board members and staff. As the American Airlines Party Coordinator on NTSB investigations, I know firsthand the efforts and time the NTSB commits to accident investigations, family assistance, and safety recommendations. If confirmed, I will be a strong advocate for implementation of those recommendations. As Chairwoman Hamady often says, the investigation is only the first step. Real safety change occurs after recommendations are implemented and improvements are made. Third, I believe there are opportunities to facilitate safety information sharing across the various modes of transportation and bring the different modes together to share lessons learned. A cross-modal approach will further the NTSB's mission of preventing accidents and saving lives. One of the reasons I'm here today is the tragic mid-air collision involving a U.S. Army helicopter and Flight 5342 earlier this year. The accident site not far from where we are sitting today. It's been one of the most difficult situations I have faced in my entire career. I was in the Family Assistance Center within days of the accident. I saw firsthand the devastation, the tremendous loss, and the work that the NTSB did to bring every resource available to grieving families. I am confident the NTSB is doing the same thing right now in Louisville, Kentucky, as they investigate Tuesday's tragedy. I offer my sincere condolences to the victims and families of those impacted by this devastating event. It is our duty collectively to learn from each tragedy, to draw knowledge to improve the safety of us all. If confirmed, I would consider it a great honor and privilege to serve my country once again, and I commit to working with this committee to improve safety across all modes of transportation. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kloster. You're recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Senator. I would like to begin with saying thank you to Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, and all the distinguished members of the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. I'm honored to appear before you today as you consider my nomination to be a member of the Surface Transportation Board. I'm also grateful to President Trump for his nomination. I spent my whole career working in the rail industry. It began at a Wisconsin rail yard during the third week of October in 1980. For those of you who don't remember, that was the same week that the Staggers Rail Act was signed into law. I was young, just out of college, didn't really know what a railroad was all about. I remember telling my dad I was going to work for the railroad. He was a soft-spoken World War II veteran farmer from South Dakota, but he was so proud and wouldn't stop talking about all the family members who had worked for the railroads. There were a lot of stories. I had no idea. But to me, it was still just a job. something I needed since I was soon getting married to the love of my life. As for the new job, the scale, the grandeur, and the importance of the railroad to the country hadn't yet been impressed on me. That would come later. The rail industry, for its part, had lost its way and was in disarray. It was the Staggers Act that provided a lifeline for what people at the time were calling a dying industry. It would take some time, but a rail renaissance would emerge, as would my love for the industry. My time with the first Class I railroad would lead to working for a regional railroad and then a short-line railroad, both of which were Class I spin-offs that were made possible by the Staggers Act. During this time, my knowledge and experience of railroad commercial, operational, and strategic matters would grow immensely. After some time off from graduate school, I moved over to the rail industry supply chain, working for the largest railcar lessor in the industry. This is where my understanding of all the different facets of equipment supply to the industry would emerge, covering the complete ecosystem from builders to lessors to shops to component suppliers and others. Then finally, about 17 years ago, I started a successful strategic consulting firm specializing in the railroad and rail equipment sectors. These last 17 years have allowed me to expand and round out my knowledge even more, adding M&A, financial, regulatory, technical, and other expertise. So when I look back on these 45 years, I see both me and the rail industry starting a new life together, beginning a new journey, one that I had no idea at the time I would embark on, but I'm so glad I did. And I look back over this time and I see the incredible changes and growth that have transpired in both me and the rail industry, and I wouldn't change a thing. Which brings me back to the last thing. Why am I here today? I'm here today to serve my country and the broader industry that has given me so much, the shippers, the railroads, and the supply chain. So I hope you will have me and allow me to serve and dedicate myself to advancing the mission of the Surface Transportation Board. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kloster. Ms. Schultz, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, Senator Lujan, and distinguished members of the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. I am honored to appear before you today as you consider my nomination for a second term as a member of the Surface Transportation Board. I am also grateful to President Trump for his continued confidence in me through this renomination. I wish to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to the people who have supported me throughout my professional life. First and foremost, I thank my late parents, Ron and Bonnie Albright, whose example instilled in me the belief that hard work and integrity are the true measure of success. That principle guides me in everything I do. I would also like to acknowledge my brother Dave, my sister-in-law Heather, and my nephews Carson and Zach. Though they are not here today, their love and support are profoundly meaningful to me. Joining me today are my two daughters, Sophia and Ella Schultz, who are my greatest inspiration. Having them here today means the world to me. Lastly, I would like to thank my fellow board members, Chairman Fuchs and Member Hedlund, for joining me today and for their continued collegiality and dedication to our shared mission. For nearly 5 years, I've had the honor and privilege of serving on the Surface Transportation Board. From the beginning, I recognized the board's critical role as the economic regulator of the freight rail industry and its responsibility for resolving service issues involving freight rail carriers and interstate passenger rail entities, along with certain limited jurisdictional matters. While that remains true today, my time on the board has deepened my appreciation for the complexity and significance of its work. By listening to stakeholders, reviewing the evidentiary record, and applying the law, I have gained a fuller understanding of how the board's decisions affect American consumers, the supply chain, and ultimately the nation's economy. During this time, I have worked closely with my colleagues and dedicated staff of the board to ensure that the nation's rail network operates efficiently and reliably. As a member, I've had the opportunity to navigate a wide range of complex and consequential challenges that reflect the evolving demands on our freight and passenger rail systems. These include mergers, abandonments, service reliability issues, rail line construction applications, restoration of rail service, data monetization, on-time performance oversight, and rate review processes. In every matter that comes before the board, I am guided by several core principles: the evidentiary record, the governing law, and the policy objectives set forth by Congress in the rail transportation policy. I am deeply aware of the impact that board decisions have on the parties who appear before us and on the broader public. I take seriously the trust placed in me by Congress and the President, and I approach each case with fairness, impartiality, and a steadfast commitment to applying the law on its merits, always mindful of what best serves the long-term health and vitality of the national rail network. If confirmed, I will continue this approach and remain committed to advancing the board's mission. I look forward to continuing to work collaboratively with industry stakeholders, my fellow members, and this committee to address the important issues that come before the board. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you all for your opening statements. Obviously, recent events with aviation, we'll look forward to talking a little bit about the NTSB, but I think before we get to current events, as Senator Lujan alluded to earlier, we're in a highly polarized time, but recently there's a bipartisan letter shared from a number of us expressing concern over proposed rail merger between Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific. I'll enter that into the record here with our committee staff. This letter, bipartisan, recognizes a growing concern from industry and from elected officials about mass consolidation within the rail industry. And the free market is the free market. As a former businessman, I support the best free market outcomes possible, but ultimately, a free market must also serve its customers effectively. And I want assurances from both you, Mr. Kloster and Ms. Schultz, and I'd be curious as your thoughts right now of what the Surface Transportation Board is going to do to examine this merger and make sure that in the end, if it does happen, we are not placing the needs of our farmers and ranchers, our manufacturers, and our rural communities who depend on an increasingly consolidated rail industry to serve them, their needs, and their businesses.
Thank you, Senator. I read the letter, and clearly this transaction will be the largest and most monumental transaction that has ever come before the board in the history of the board. And what I can say is that I also expect that the record in this matter will be voluminous, matching, the magnitude of the case. I can speak for myself in saying that in all matters that come before the board, I review the evidentiary record, the comments that are filed on the docket, and the applicable law and statutes, and I will be prepared to do so in this case as well.
Mr. Kloster, any thoughts on the merger?
Yes.
Senator, I've spent my whole career in the rail industry, and I've seen a lot, and I've seen all the mergers, the successes, but also the failures. My view is that, yes, this will be the largest merger ever. And, my commitment to you and to this committee would be to be objective, to be fair, to be impartial, to do all the research and the analysis to come up with the right decision regarding this merger or any topic that, issue that comes before the board.
And ultimately, for the board, this is more of a philosophical question, but for either of you, what do you view the highest responsibility of the board? Is it rail safety and standards of operation, or is it industry health? And as far as industry health, where does that vector point you? Is that health of the corporations, the rail corporations? Is it health of the businesses they serve? How do you view that philosophical ordering of priorities?
Senator, thank you for the question. With all due respect, because the merger is a pending matter, I have to be very, very careful about any comments I make on, my views on any of the standards that I might be reviewing. As I'm sure you're aware, this will be a case of first impression as it relates to the new merger rules. They are very much public and available on our website, but for me to provide comment on my views on how I view the standards of law or how I might apply them would be pre-decisional.
I agree with Member Schultz. The only thing that I would add would be that I don't think there's any particular, there are a lot of matters that are important, and it's going to be incumbent upon me as a member, assuming I'm confirmed, to weigh all those matters.
Mr. Deleeuw, obviously we had a tragedy in Louisville recently, and that comes on the heel. We have the safest airspace in the world. We have the safest aviation system in the world. I think it's important we remember that because clickbait and YouTube wants us to think that planes will fall out of the sky, but they do fall out of the sky. Accidents do happen, and I think this actually dovetails into our last conversation about mass consolidation in any industry. Oftentimes those benefits are billed as efficiencies, but it also creates a lack of competition between manufacturers and between operators. So I'm curious as your thoughts right now. We only have a few seconds left, but what are your current concerns about what American aviation looks like so we can continue to be the leaders of the world, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in commercial operations? How do we maintain America's aviation dominance in the 21st century?
Well, thank you, Senator, for the question. I do think we have the premier aviation system in the world. We have, by far, the absolute best controllers in the United States. We have professional pilots. I think our national airspace system is safe. When we do discover things are maybe not quite right, for instance, the government shutdown, the airlines, the FAA are very proactive at looking at the data and making decisions to making sure things stay safe. So in all matters in the aviation industry, we do a very formalized risk assessments. We look at the consequences, and we look for ways to mitigate risks that we discover based on the hazards we're aware of.
Well, the NTSB is a great organization, and the entire world has modeled their air safety off of ours. So I look forward to you continuing that legacy. Senator Lujan, I recognize you for your questions.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Deleeuw, yesterday I had the opportunity to ask Mr. Morse questions about his role as Deputy Director in the Office of Presidential Personnel. He told me in a meeting in my office when I asked him if he would ever do anything illegal, he said no. I appreciated that. But during the hearing, he refused to answer any of my questions about the firings he carried out, saying they were subject to litigation. However, Mr. Morse's actions have a direct link to your nomination today because he wrote the email illegally firing Vice Chair Alvin Brown from the National Transportation Safety Board. Yes or no, is your nomination to the NTSB to take the vacancy left by Mr. Brown's firing?
Senator, thank you for the question. I have an expertise flying aircraft and aviation safety. I'm eager to serve on the NTSB, but I'm not a constitutional lawyer. So your question, which I certainly understand, I will respectfully have to leave that with the courts and the legal process.
Which position would you be taking? Is there a vacant position today?
Sir, I've just been nominated to be one of the board members at the NTSB.
You don't know which position it is?
Sir, I believe it's an open position currently, but
I don't think it's a question from anyone here. It's not up to the courts. I'm surprised you won't even answer that one. But I'll move on. I'm not trying to play gotcha here. Just that's fact. Anyone dispute that? Hearing none. Yes or no, does the NTSB have a, quote, for cause removal criteria, which says that, quote, the president may remove a member for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office? And if you need the statute, it's 49 U.S.C. section 1111C, and I can get a copy of it if you need to see it.
Yes, Senator.
Yes or no, did Mr. Brown file a lawsuit suing the Trump administration for his illegal removal from the position at NTSB?
Senator, thank you for that question. Quite frankly, I'm not aware of I hear rumors, I hear some stories in the media, but I am not aware of
well-
official lawsuits.
Fact,
I'm not aware of it.
Mr. Brown filed a lawsuit. I don't know if there's any dispute. Yes or no, has Mr. Brown's case been resolved?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Do you believe in the judicial process?
Yes, Senator.
Last week, I joined my Democratic colleagues in a letter to the chairman urging him not to move forward with this hearing on NTSB Vice Chair Brown's replacement. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, Vice Chair Brown is actively challenging his unlawful removal in court. If the Senate moves forward to confirm the replacement and the courts then reinstate Vice Chair Brown to the NTSB, we could have 2 Senate-confirmed board members for only 1 position. My question, Captain Deleeuw, if the court rules in favor of Vice Chair Brown and direct him to be reinstated, will you commit to stepping aside swiftly?
Senator, that is something that I have not considered or thought about, but if that situation was to arise, I would reach out and talk to the general counsel of the NTSB and possibly the Department of Justice.
Appreciate that. Mr. Schultz, since you currently serve on the Surface Transportation Board, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Or Ms. Schultz, I apologize. Yes or no, is the Surface Transportation Board an independent federal agency?
Sorry. Yes, Senator, by
Yes
way
or
of
no?
statute.
Yes or no, did Board Chair Patrick Fuchs send an email to all career staff placing political blame for the shutdown?
Chairman Fuchs sent an email indicating that there was an impending shutdown.
Did he put blame on someone? One party or the other?
There was language within the email that indicated that, yes.
So, in fact, he did place political blame for the shutdown. The reason I say this is statements like these are very concerning. As you know, there's a law that passed Congress years ago. It was actually by a New Mexico U.S. Senator, Senator Hatch. It's called the Hatch Act. And this could be seen as a violation of the Hatch Act. Ms. Schultz, in your opening statement from your prior confirmation hearing, you wrote, quote, "It is incumbent upon the board to approach matters brought before it by conducting a thorough analysis of the facts and adjudicating matters in an impartial manner within the bounds of its jurisdiction and the law." However, the president has made it clear that agencies like the STB should not be independent, but wholly beholden to the president's direction and demands. How can the STB effectively function while subjected to political interference and coercion? Is it possible? How can the STB effectively function while subjected to political interference and coercion?
I'm sorry, Senator, I couldn't hear the last portion. While,
How can the STB function effectively if they are subjected to political interference and coercion?
coercion, sorry, sir.
I have an accent, I apologize.
I couldn't hear the last part, I'm sorry. Senator, I appreciate the concern that you've raised. I would also go back to, I believe, what you opened with, which is the STB is an independent agency. It's contained within statute. And I can say that if confirmed, I will uphold and apply the law in a fair and impartial way.
I appreciate it. I have other questions, but I want to be mindful of my colleagues as well. Very much appreciate your response, Ms. Schultz.
Senator Baldwin, recognized for your questions.
Thank you. I'm going to continue down a similar path to Ranking Member Lujan. Mr. Kloster, I'm concerned deeply about the independence and the integrity of the Surface Transportation Board, especially heading into an extremely significant decision that the board will have to make regarding Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern and that merger. Union Pacific's CEO recently met with the president about the merger and went as far as to make a contribution of funds to help President Trump build his ballroom. President Trump has stated that the merger sounds good to him, even though it should be clear that a merger of this magnitude would increase costs, create more unreliable service for shippers, and reduce overall competition. When this merger comes before the board, do I have your commitment to act independently of political influence and base your decision on the merits and the merits alone? Or do you plan to deliver the decision that the president wants?
Absolutely. I will treat it with independence, impartiality. The merger application, they haven't even filed an application, so no one even knows what they're going to propose. So I'm, if I'm confirmed and I'm on the board, I will look forward to, like everybody else, reading that and considering that. But I will promise to do all my research, my analysis, again, in an independent manner.
On that issue of research and analysis, the Surface Transportation Board's post-2001 major rail consolidation procedures places heightened emphasis on whether Class I railroad mergers enhance rather than simply preserve competition. So will you commit to following this comprehensive evaluation required by these updated standards when evaluating the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern merger?
Yes,
Thank you.
I will follow the law.
Ms. Schultz, I'm going to ask you the exact same question that I just asked Mr. Kloster. Will you commit to following the rigorous and comprehensive evaluation required by the STB's post-2001 merger rules when evaluating the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern merger?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. It is my understanding, and I'm dovetailing on a question that Senator Deleeuw just asked, because when we had, and thank you both for meeting with me in advance of this and having a fulsome discussion about many of the issues that the STB will grapple with. But I asked a question about whether there were any partisan postings or emails that you were aware of. And it is my understanding, and you replied no. But it is my understanding that just before the agency closed its doors on October 1st, that Chairman Fuchs sent an unprecedented email to agency staff blaming Democrats for the government shutdown. Are you aware of this email, and did you receive it?
Yes, Senator, I did receive it. And I'd like to note, in our meeting, at that time, I was not aware of the email. Upon meeting with some of the members of your staff, it was brought to my attention. I did go back and I did review the email, but at the time that we met, I was, in fact, not aware of the email.
Among other things, that email states that Democrats are blocking this continuing resolution in the U.S. Senate due to unrelated policy demands. And I have to tell you that I was really disappointed to see this email. It is unbecoming of an independent board, which is looking more like Donald Trump's board, with the illegal firing of Robert Primus. Do you think it's appropriate for the board leadership of an independent agency to circulate a clearly partisan email to staff?
Senator, I believe, it is my understanding from reading the news that that email went out across the government as a whole. That said, what I can
So the chairman
say,
sent that to other departments, other agencies?
not our chairman. I believe similar language was included across in other.
Do you believe it was appropriate?
Senator, what I can say is, if confirmed, I will review every case the way I've always approached it, which is with impartiality, absent and apart from politics, which has no place at all within any board decision. And I give you my commitment that I will, any pending matter, I will apply the law on its merits.
Do you believe the firing of Robert Primus was justified?
Senator, as you're aware, my former colleague, Mr. Primus, has filed a lawsuit against the Surface Transportation Board. It is my practice to not comment on pending litigation.
Okay, more hypothetically then, should the expectation be that as board members, you will be removed if you don't support the president's agenda?
I have been appointed by the president for my first term. I have been nominated for a second term, and I serve at the pleasure of the president. So he has the power to appoint and the power to remove.
Thanks for your answer, Ms. Schultz. We're over time. We'll go back to the NTSB. We've talked a lot about rail here. None of you are constitutional lawyers, so let's talk about planes and trains. Your role in the NTSB. Obviously, the NTSB is the gold standard in investigating post-crash analysis. As a survivor of a fatal plane crash, I've been through an NTSB investigation. And I don't think anybody can argue that how you dissect a crash scene and draw lessons from that is renowned worldwide. But I think one thing that we can probably do better is hasten the feedback loop between when an accident happens and how that feedback makes it back to our manufacturing base so we can ensure, and not just manufacturing base, our air traffic control system. We've heard a lot these past few months, and of course we're hearing a lot now about how America's ATC system is old. It's struggling under the weight of growing air traffic, and obviously now we're having controller shortages. So would love to hear your thoughts about what role the NTSB can play in ensuring that our ATC modernization and airspace modernization happens rapidly and safely so we can meet the demands of 21st century air travel.
Well, thank you, Senator, for the question. You mentioned about the NTSB. The NTSB is a small agency, roughly about 425 people, plus or minus 20. It is the preeminent safety agency worldwide, and what's amazing is for 400 and plus people, they provide a fantastic service to the American public. So the NTSB does take the time. You mentioned about the timeliness. I think that's certainly improved in the last few years, but the NTSB is not about necessarily the timeliness piece of it. They want to be investigation that is timely, but it's all about the quality. So I've worked with the NTSB for years, and I would say that timeliness is an issue, and they're aware of it, but it's all about the quality. So they want to make a good final report with safety recommendations that will benefit safety and save lives.
Thank you. Mr. Deleeuw, ahead of this hearing, Democrats criticized me for including you in this panel because of the pending litigation involving the former mayor of Jacksonville. That is a distraction from the merits of your nomination. 11 people were killed in an aviation accident on Tuesday. This is a serious nomination, and by any measure, you are extremely qualified. I want to start by asking you about your experience working in aviation safety. You currently serve as the Managing Director for Safety and Efficiency at American Airlines, and you've been in various safety positions at American and at the Allied Pilots Association for more than 15 years. What aviation safety issues have you personally worked on?
Well, sir, thank you, Senator. Thank you for that question. Well, over the years, I've worked with a lot of different programs. The airlines, they follow a safety management system, and so we've got 4 components to that: safety promotion, safety policy, safety risk management, safety assurance. I've been primarily in the safety assurance aspect of that, which involves the voluntary confidential reporting programs. In aviation, we call it the Aviation Safety Action Program. We also have the flight ops quality assurance, which is flight data monitoring. I was responsible, working with my team, to start a continuous LOSA program. And in the last several years, we've started another safety assurance program called the Learning and Improvement Team. Some of these are trendsetters, let's say. But on the other part of it is that over the years, several things have popped up. I would have to say that I was fortunate to be part of a joint committee between the American Airlines and the Allied Pilots Association on the 737 MAX return to service. And that was successful. American was actually the first carrier to return the MAX to revenue service. But the entire process of working with the manufacturer was well done, and I think it was able to improve safety for all.
Thank you. By any measure, you are objectively very well qualified for this position. As you know, in October, this committee unanimously approved my legislation, the Rotor Act, which requires aircraft operating in controlled airspace to be equipped with ADS-B-In technology. ADS-B-In is a valuable, safety-enhancing technology that improves situational awareness in the cockpit. Mr. Deleeuw, the NTSB recommended ADS-B-In years ago. You're a commercial pilot. Can you tell us about your experience implementing ADS-B-In and why it is important?
Thank you, Senator. That is, it's a great question. I'm glad to answer that. I'm a huge proponent of ADS-B-In, and I certainly appreciate everybody's work on the Commerce Committee and certainly your leadership to get that pushed through. You know, American Airlines has equipped many of our aircraft with the ADS-B-In technology. We have been using that, and we've been trying the system out. We've worked well with the air traffic controllers in a certain center. At first, everybody's a little bit skeptical, but over the time now, I would have to say that as we've looked through it and we've tried the system out and we've worked with it, both pilots and the controllers like the system. It is going to improve safety. It will save lives. It'll reduce controller workload. It is the next step we need to improve safety in the airline system.
And what do you foresee as the challenges to implementation?
Well, Senator, I'm a safety guy, but I would have to say that anytime new technology comes out, there's always a question about cost. I understand that. But my understanding is that people I've talked to, whether it's the labor associations or the other airlines, there is always a little bit of concern on that. But in this case here, there seems to be support throughout the industry for ADS-B-In.
Well, I'm hopeful that the Senate and the full Congress will listen to your testimony and move quickly to pass the Rotor Act into law and put it on the President's desk to be signed. Turning to the STB. In 2023, Congress enacted legislation that I wrote to fix a broken permitting process for 4 bridges between Texas and Mexico. One of those bridges is the Puerto Verde Bridge in Maverick County, Texas. This past summer, the STB approved the environmental impact statement for the Puerto Verde Bridge's corresponding railroad project. However, I've heard that Union Pacific has objected and put up various operational roadblocks to completing this project. Ms. Schultz and Mr. Kloster, if confirmed, will you commit to working with me to ensure that the Green Eagle Railroad and the Puerto Verde Bridge sponsors get a fair shot to finish their project?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you.
Yes.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you to the nominees for being here. Congratulations on being nominated by the President of the United States. I'm sure for you and your families, it's a great honor. Mr. Deleeuw, start with you. Obviously, the NTSB is an investigative agency. You're not a regulator, correct?
Yes, Senator.
But you've been around the block, as they say. You've seen a lot in your career. Like our chairman said, eminently qualified. Kind of help us understand, help the public understand what the day is like for an air traffic controller. From your investigations, where you see things went well, not commenting on a specific investigation, but just generally speaking, would you agree it's a very high-stress job?
Senator, I appreciate that question. So I've been flying for 45 years in the National Airspace System. I've flown all over the world, over many countries. I can say unequivocally that the air traffic controllers in this country are by far the best in the world. The air traffic controllers, they have long hours, demanding days. I'm aware of some of the impacts of the government shutdown. I'm also aware of the struggles they've had in keeping controllers, but I'm fortunate to go, every year I participate in the, what they call the NATCA Communication for Safety, and I'm always amazed at the professionalism of the controllers. They have an award ceremony on the last night there, which is they refer to as the Archie Awards, and they recognize the controllers who save lives. So I would have to say that the I'm not an air traffic controller, but I've certainly worked with them. I consider them part of my brother and sisterhood, but they are, they are what keeps this national airspace system running.
And with a stressful job like that, we have limitations, right? They can't work 20 hours a day, for example. They have to take breaks. Is that accurate?
Senator, I'm actually not familiar with their work rules.
But you wouldn't want an air traffic controller that was fatigued, that was overly stressed. You want to make sure they're crisp and they're doing their job. That'd be accurate, just based on investigations you've been around?
Yes, Senator.
How many people do you know in your career that were either your coworkers that went a month and a half without getting a paycheck? Have you ever experienced that? In other words, have you ever, would you, like when you were just starting your young family, would you have gone a month and a half without a paycheck?
Well, I would hope I would not have had to do that. I'm sure I'd be mowing lawns then.
Right, and that would add enormous stress to you, your family, your spouse, your kids.
Yes,
Having to
Senator.
think about daycare, right? You can't afford daycare. Daycare doesn't take credit. They expect to get paid.
Yes,
And
sir.
all of that circulating through somebody's mind adds even more stress. Is that fair?
Yes, Senator.
You need to be crisp and on. About a week ago, very unreported story. There was a helicopter, see if this story sounds familiar. There was a helicopter flying through the airspace at Cleveland Hopkins Airport. Fortunately, it was a nice day, and that helicopter flew almost directly in front of an inbound Southwest Airlines flight at 2,000 feet with almost no separation, vertical separation. They were literally on a collision path. Now, when you're a pilot and you can see things out of the cockpit, it's a lot easier to be able to prevent those kinds of accidents. Is that accurate? Because you can see the obstacle in front of you?
Yes, Senator.
And you've flown into Cleveland Hopkins before in your career?
Many times, sir.
So, you know, we're like Texas. We have beautiful weather 365 days a year. Now, imagine if that had been, instead of last week, a nice sunny day, imagine it had been a heavy snowstorm, zero visibility, snow showers, and you were totally dependent on instrumentation. What would have possibly happened in that situation?
Senator, thank you for the question. I'm not 100% familiar with the event you're referring to, and I remember reading or seeing something about that. Based on what you're telling me, I assume there's an investigation going on.
There is.
And with that being the case, I would prefer not to get hold of the NTSB, and I'd prefer to recuse and not discuss that yet.
And Mr. Chairman, the point I'm trying to make is obvious. We've asked these air traffic controllers to go into a dark room in a very stressful job where there's all kinds of regulations about what they can and can't do because we want to reduce that stress. And we're now day 37 into a government shutdown in which they have not gotten paid, and they're being used as political pawns. And quite frankly, I find that atrocious. I find it atrocious that the Air Traffic Controllers Union itself, not exactly a right-wing organization, has begged Democrats to allow us to have a vote to open the government. But Democrats have refused, and they're playing with people's lives. They're allowing our skies to become more dangerous. So for my Democrat colleagues, especially in this committee, that constantly talk about how important safety is, why don't we actually open the government today? Or actually let us have a vote. Let us have a vote to open the government and get people paid. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask some questions to Ms. Schultz. I'm going to respond to Senator from Ohio. Ms. Schultz, I appreciate the question and response that you had to Senator Baldwin. Mr. Kloster, the same question I have to you was, the firing Mr. Primus justified?
Please turn your microphone on.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know him. I don't know the circumstances. I wasn't privy to the circumstances that he was removed by President Trump.
So I have a follow-up.
It's in litigation. So I don't really have a comment on that.
I have a follow-up here. The White House said that they fired Mr. Primus because he did not support the President's America First agenda. Their words, the White
Yeah.
House. Ms. Schultz, yes or no, do you feel pressure to support the president's agenda?
Thank you for the question, Senator. The answer to that is no. Again, I think in response to other questions, in my time on the board with pending matters, I approach it from a pretty similar manner, which is to look at the applicable law, including any statutes, regs, existing precedent. I also review the record extensively, consider the arguments on the merits, and the policy principles that are set forth by Congress in the rail transportation policy.
I'm sorry that the senator from Ohio has to leave after what he shared. I was going to share with him some statistics from DWI in Ohio and how many people die there every year. I was also going to respond to all that happened recently under President Trump with the nonsense that came from Elon Musk with termination after termination, threat after threat. My House Republican colleagues have been home for, 40, 50 days. I don't know what they're up to. Speaker Johnson, when he was asked about bringing them back specific to pay the controllers, Speaker Johnson said, quote, he wouldn't bring the House back to pay controllers because he said it'd be a waste of our time. Look, I don't want to get in a back and forth of pointing fingers. I'm tired of that. And I'm falling guilty to it every day. It's time to fix this stuff. The reason there wasn't a shutdown under the previous administration with Democrats in the majority working with our Republican colleagues is we worked together. Those CRs were amended. Democrats and Republicans got together to do the right thing for the American people. We need to do that again. And I'm certainly hopeful that we'll get there as well. I'm sorry that Senator Moreno doesn't want to see that there's a 26% increase in DWI deaths in Ohio. That one of the leading causes of fatalities in Ohio is people getting killed by people driving drunk. I hope that we'll have a chance to have a conversation and that rather than just trying to throw a swing, you want to sit here and you're going to listen to the response as well. I'm just terribly sorry about that as well, but let me just get back here to close, and I appreciate the follow-up here. Mr. Kloster, just same question to you. Do you feel pressure to support the president's agenda?
Well, I'm not on the board, so there's been no pressure, but if I was on the board, if I was confirmed, I would take anyone's input, whether it was the president or a member of this committee. I would take their input, and then I would use that to make an independent, fair, unbiased decision.
You would take their input if it was in the record? Or are you going to take their input if they go to social media and say something?
Yeah, I'm not on social media. I mean, other than LinkedIn, and that's.
Do you watch television news? Do you watch
Oh,
broadcast
totally.
news?
Yeah.
So if the president says on broadcast news,
Yeah.
I want you all to do something, and it's not in the record, how do you deal with that?
That kind of stuff goes in one ear and out the other, for me.
It doesn't matter, correct?
It's not going to matter.
It has to be in the record. Whatever evidence it is that you're going to use to make a decision has to be in the record that you're evaluating of whatever the case is. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by on the record. If someone called me up.
So help me understand, sir. I'm from a small farm here.
Yeah, and this is my
you're gonna-
first foray into this world.
Mr. Kloster, you've accepted a nomination
Yes.
into a very serious job into an independent agency.
Yeah.
There are serious cases presented to you, a track going awry and going off a line. The case is presented to you to try to figure out what's happened. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a record that you review that's part of that case? Or what would you call it? What's the paper that gets put in front of you that you have to read and understand that all the evidence, all the investigations, what is that called? What do you call it? Because I want to use your
No, I understand what you mean by record now. Yeah.
Would you call it a record?
Yeah, application.
I'm using
all
the
the
right
evidence.
Okay. If someone tells you to do something in the news, since you watch the news, you don't do social media, but you watch the news, and it's not in the record, as we've just had a conversation about what the record is, Do you just completely ignore it? Does it have no bearing in the outcome of the case?
As I said, I would take all input,
All right.
you know.
Ms. Schultz, I'm not even going to ask you the same question because I know you're going to say no. It has to be in the record. That's how you've proven this. So, Mr. Kloster, look, I'm not a JD. I'm not as smart as my colleagues here. I'm a former public utility commissioner. I had to go to Reno to an ALJ school. You might want to go to the same school before you take this job so that you can understand what your responsibility is and how to evaluate a record and make a decision, man. If any one of us goes to the news or we speak from the mountaintops or even in this hearing, and it's not in the case and the record that you have before you, that you're making a decision, it don't matter, man. I certainly hope that we just get to that case. And Mr. Chairman, maybe you and I can support some budget and funding to get some ALJ training for some of these folks, and I'd be proud to co-sponsor it with you.
Well, I appreciate that recommendation. And I also admit that, you know, if confirmed, there's going to be a bit of a learning curve for me in understanding how things are done. And I commit to getting up to speed as quick as I can.
There's a good school in Reno. I'd be happy to get you information on it if you'd like it, Mr. Kloster.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you to each of the nominees, Mr. Deleeuw, Mr. Kloster, Ms. Schultz. My final question is required of all nominees. If confirmed, do you pledge to work collaboratively with this committee to provide thorough and timely responses to this committee's requests and to appear before the committee when requested?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. I have 31 letters of support from various organizations for the nominations of Mr. Deleeuw, Mr. Kloster, and Ms. Schultz. I ask unanimous consent that these letters be inserted in the hearing record. Without objection, so ordered. Senators will have until the close of business on November 10th to submit questions for the record. The nominees will have until the close of business on November 13th to respond to those questions. That concludes today's hearing. The committee stands adjourned.